Okay, here we go. I feel better about this now. It doesn't look like I'm clipping, so that's good. All right, so we are gonna get started. Um, I don't know what I'm going to do here. Make sure that's showing up. But we are going to go through FreeCodeCamp and uh, wow, it's been a minute. Oh wow, that was pretty easy. Okay, so I've gone through this before as a um and this is what got me started off coding. And so I just want to go through here and complete these, as many of these as I can as a recording. But and so this rough live stream is just me testing out how viable that may be. So we have basic HTML and HTML5, basic CSS, applied visual design. That sounds fun. Applied accessibility. Now, this is some cool stuff that not a lot of developers that I've encountered really know well. Accessibility is usually pushed off as a secondary or tertiary issue and doesn't happen until later, if ever. Responsive web design principles. Okay. CSS Flexbox, that was pretty short. CSS Grid, and then projects. This is cool. Projects are going to be a lot of fun because the way they word these, you do have a lot of flexibility to make these your own. Claim your certification. Nice. I do have a certification, but it's a course that they don't have up here anymore. It's a front end course, very similar to this. So let's go ahead and start with the first lesson. Change the color of text. Wow, if I was not a developer, this page would intimidate me. This is your first time seeing HTML. This is a lot happening. Okay, so I'm a bit familiar with FreeCodeCamp, so I know that we've got these three pans here. We have the instructions here, and then some buttons as far as to run the tests. And then we have our code. This is our code in this middle section. And then to the right is a preview of what this code is outputting. And I'm calling this code, don't hate on me if you're a programmer here. This is not technically code. This is a markup language. Well, someone might consider this code. It's close enough for our purposes. We're gonna stick to our guns and just call it code. This is HTML. This is just this is essentially a text file with these things in here. But I don't need to explain that. This FreeCodeCamp course is going to explain this to us. So all we need to know right now is all this mess right here is producing this output right here. So let's read. Change the color of the text. Now let's change the color of our text. Okay, I'm assuming it's talking about this text. We can do this by changing the style of your H2 element. What's an H2 element? Doesn't matter right now. We'll get there. It's just one of these. It's this guy right here. The property that is responsible for the color of an element's text is the color style property. Here's how you would set your H2 element's text color to blue. So H2, okay, style equals color, got a colon, blue, semicolon, then more quotes. Note that it is a good practice to inline style declarations with a semicolon. We're talking about this right here. Here's the directions. Change your H2 element style so that the text color is red. All right, so if you're new here, you might be wondering, okay, this isn't really explaining to me anything. This is just telling me to change it, and they give an example or whatever. And that's normal. Doing these types of tasks, a lot of it is just comes down to your exposure to to it. And so you're being exposed to it, and eventually it's going to come together. It's a lot like learning a natural spoken language where half the battle is just exposure and re-exposure mixed in with some instruction. So looking at this, I can, through scanning the code, I can see, all right, we got this H2 element up here, which is this cat photo app. They must be talking about that. That's the only H2 I see. And I could even, well, let me Control F. No, it won't. So I want to change the color of it to red. And so let's do style equals we have color, we have red, semicolon. Now, nothing's happening over here. If I run the tests, these fail. And so what am I doing wrong? Well, I've got some of my syntax wrong. So it's mostly there. I'm just missing quotation marks. So let's add them here and here. And check that out. Cat photo app is now red. And I could even say blue, green, yellow. And if I got real fancy, I could say something like RGB. And I could say, this is the red value. I want only 10 red. I want 250 green. And I want 55 blue. And that's this green color. If I bumped up these colors, we're gonna get a different blue color. Anyways, this is not important right now. We're sticking with the basics. We're just gonna say red. Run all the tests. Bam! Encore, success. 2% complete of the CSS course. Basic CSS. Submit and go to next challenge. Use CSS selectors to style elements. Now, if I am doing this not as a live course, I am going to stop the video here and then start again. But this is me testing the flow so that when I do these properly, I know what I'm getting into. All right, use CSS selectors to style elements. If you're anything like me, you want to just jump down to the directions right here and ignore all of this. But it really is worth reading this. A lot of the times I got stuck on here or just missed some important information. It's because I was so ambitious and I just tried to skip straight to the directions. So let's read this. With CSS, there are hundreds of CSS properties that you can use to change the way an element looks on your page. When you entered h2 style equals color red cat photo app, you were styling the individual h2 elements with inline CSS, which CSS stands for cascading style sheets. That's not so important, but it's good to know. That's one way to specify the style of an element, but there is a better way, emphasis on a better way here, to apply CSS. At the top of your code, create a style block like this. All right, we're going to stop, and it's at the top of the code. Style, sweet. Inside that block, you can create a custom CSS selector for all of your H2 elements. For example, if you wanted all H2 elements to be red, you would add a style rule that looks like this. H2, okay, a little confusing so far. You might wonder, like, how did I know how to do the syntax here? It's just by looking at the rest of the HTML elements. The opening tag says style, and the closing tag has /style. So in here, we are no longer writing HTML in here. No more HTML. All we're writing inside of here is CSS. So it wants us to refer to the H2 elements. And we have to use these funny brackets here. And I just hit enter here. But I'm just going to keep it inside these brackets in line, and then we can separate it all. We're going to say color red. Okay. And there's a semicolon after that. So this right here, this this right here, the CSS, this is valid. It's also valid if you move things around like that. And the only reason why we move things around like this is just so it's easier for humans to read, not because the computer cares. So, all right, let's continue on. We made it through here. Now that note that it's important for us, note that it's important to have both opening and closing curly braces. We got those. And around each element style rules. You also need to make sure that your element style definition is between the opening and closing tags. Finally, be sure to add a semicolon to the end of each of your element style rules. Now, the instructions. Delete your H2 element style attributes. It's talking about this right here. This is the style attribute inside the HTML. And instead, create a CSS style block. Add all of the necessary CSS to turn all H2 elements blue. Huh. I thought that would work. I don't see it working. But we're going to run the test, and it's probably going to tell us what's wrong. Okay. We remove the style, check. You should create a style element, check. Your H2 element should be blue. It's not blue. Your style sheet HTML, H2 declaration should be valid. Yep. So we're good with everything except that it's not blue. What on earth could I be doing wrong? I'm going to start by removing this right here. That could be messing something up. Aha! And there we have it. Ah, code's fun. It really is. So now that we see that this is blue, I got rid of that mess I threw in the code. Let's run the test again. Yay! We were successful. Let's go to the next challenge. Okay, so I'm thinking through this. I'm trying to think, how can I bring value with these videos? And when I was going through the course, I didn't want the answer to be given to me. I just wanted to get unstuck. So I think that where I can provide value with this is not to jump straight to the solution and to write code, but to break down the problem and then start breaking down the solution and make sure that those are distinct parts. So let's start by breaking down the problem. Now, okay, so I'm going to start with what we have to do here. What are we trying to accomplish? Inside your style element, change the H2 selector to red text and update the color value from blue to red. Give your H2 element the class attribute with a value of red text. Okay, so inside your style element, this is the style element, change the H2 selector, this is the selector, to red text, and update the color value, this is the color value, from blue to red. Give your H2 element, this is the H2 element, the class attribute with the value of red text. Okay, so that's what we're trying to accomplish. Now let's just read the descriptions here. Use a CSS class, this is new, a CSS class, to style an element. Classes are reusable styles that can be added to HTML elements. Here's an example of CSS class declaration. Okay, notice the difference here between just saying H2. This is a dot. This does not have a dot. And then some name after the dot. You can see that we've created a CSS class called blue text with the style tag. You can probably apply a class to an HTML element like this. H2 is a space. I'll expand this so you can see it. H2 space class equals blue text. There's no dot here, notice. It's just the name. We only have the dot in this style tag. Equals blue text. Note that in your CSS style element, class names start with a period. Yes. In your HTML elements, class attributes, the class name does not include the period. Exactly what we just talked about. All right, so we're going to jump into the solution here. And then after that, I'm going to try to give a little bit more information that this doesn't include that I think you'll appreciate. So we know the first thing we need to do is change the selector to dot red text. Well, now that we've done this, this is no longer red or blue. So we have to add the second element. And here we're going to say class equals, what was it? Red text. Okay, that's how we add the class thing. Why is it not working? Why is it not doing anything? Oh, do you see my mistake? I'm silly. I hope you do. If not, that's okay. We're all learning here. I put red text in the wrong place. This should be color. It's the name up here. That should be red text. And if we notice it's blue, so let's change this to red. So what we have here, this should pass the test. Let's go ahead and run the test just to prove it. Ta-da, we're done. Now, I wanted to try to, if you're a bit of a visual learner, if you just appreciate visual examples, I'm going to try to show a little bit more of what's happening here. So here, let's say if we had another H2 element, H2 blue text, and add another H2 element, yellow text. We can really call these anything. We can just say aardvark. All right, so I just created a bunch of H2 elements in here. It's just like bonus content right now. And if we notice that the only one that has red text is the one that we explicitly added the class to. And we can add this class to other H2 elements, and we can see it changes the text red. But we can also add the class to other things, like this little p tag right here. Oh, wow, now this has red text. Because wherever we put the class, it is going to give that element that class. Okay? Now, one thing that wasn't very well explained was when we had the H2 selector, is that its job is to change all of the elements to blue. And so these are all of our H2 elements. They don't have a class, and instead they get this style we gave them. So hopefully this will explain it. FreeCodeCamp will explain this a little bit better later on. But I just wanted to give you the visual example of what happens when you have more than one H2 element. So we've already succeeded with this particular test. So I'm just going to undo the changes I made. I'm going to run the tests again and go to the next challenge. Become a monthly supporter of our nonprofit. I did this while I was in the course. My goal was like I was going to donate until I graduated the course. So that did two things. It gave me a financial incentive that the faster I graduated, the sooner I could stop paying. And then two, it was also just because I thought that what they did was a great opportunity, and I was grateful. Absolutely no pressure for you to do that. That's just what I chose to do. And it was a combination of selfish and unselfish motivations there. All right, FreeCodeCamp, not a sponsor. I've got like 0 viewers. Of course they're not. Style multiple elements with the CSS class. Ooh, okay. So this is just what I was explaining last time. I think I should stop trying to get ahead of the course. Every time I explain something, it explains it later on. Style multiple elements with a CSS class. Classes allow you to use the same CSS styles on multiple HTML elements. You can see this by adding your red text class to the first P element. Okay. So right now, I'm going to run the test without doing anything. And some of the tests passed, which means I didn't mess up anything or mess up those elements, but some of them fail. And the failing test says your first P element should be red. It's not. And it says your first P element should have the class red text. It doesn't have that. Sometimes I like to run the test for more information on exactly what I'm trying to accomplish. So class, we're adding a class here. And after the class, we have an equal sign. I'm just looking at this for an example. Then we have quotation marks. And inside the quotation marks, we have the name red text. Run the test again, and bam, we have it. We see that now this has the red text thing. And so does this. Okay, change the font size of an element. Font size is controlled by the font size CSS property like this. Inside the same style tag that contains your red text class, create an entry for the P elements and set the font size to 16 pixels. Okay. So I don't know that we've seen putting multiple things in here before. I think if you're getting ahead of yourself, you could easily just delete this and try to create this, but we don't need to. We can have more than one thing in here. Font size is 30 px. And run the tests. It fails. What do I have wrong? I've got a syntax error. I accidentally called that font size and did it the wrong way. Now this should work. I just want to make sure this is working by changing this to 300. I'm not seeing anything change here. Let's run the test and see. Oh, I read that wrong. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting fatigued. I should slow down. Inside the same style tags, create an entry for P elements. P elements. We're going to change their font size to 16. Okay. Yeah, that's working. Run tests. Boom, there we go. All right, I am going to, I think I can do this. I think if I just stick to the course content and don't get too ahead of myself, that will be good. And maybe I can add some pauses that, hey, we're moving to the solution. Let's do this one how I think the right format is. Okay, welcome back. We're doing launch code, responsive web design, basic CSS, sets the font family of an element. And this is lesson number, I don't know this, but I'm going to make up a number 16, the 16th one. All right. We have the learning portion. We have the directions. So let's read the learning portion. Set the font family of an element. Font family. What's a font family? You can set which font an element should use by using the font family property. This is a property. This is a property. For example, if you wanted to set your H2 element's font to sans serif, you would use the following CSS. H2 font family, sans serif. Make all of your P elements, this is the directions, make all of your P elements, this is a P element, this is a P element, use the monospace format font. So what we could do, and this we're moving into the solution here. And I'm just going to go straight to the solution to not waste your time, and then we'll do more discussion afterwards. Okay. So for the solution, we're going to write font family, and the word is monospace. There we go. Did you see that the font change over here? That's kind of cool. Just going to zoom in a little bit. I think that'll be helpful. I think we have room to zoom in. There we go. Let's even F11 this. And can I zoom in some more? Maybe not with F11 on. Okay. F11 this. All right. Get rid of that thing up there. Pretty good. This is easier to see. Less distractions. All right, you can set which font an element should use by using the font family property. All right, did that. Successful. Now let's get into some extracurricular stuff. You have passed this test if you followed along. You stick around for more information, bonus content. All right, so if you notice, I put this inside of the P thing. I could also put it in another P thing, but that's just a waste of code. You know, the computer's going to treat it in a similar way. It's going to treat it in a similar way as if I had left it right here. So what happens, and here's an interesting reason why these could be separate versus not separate. What happens if I change this to sans serif? Well, we now have sans serif font here, and it's overriding the monospace one. And if I were to flip this around, where this was monospace, and this was sans serif, we have the monospace font. Okay. And basically what's happening is this is taking priority over this because this comes later. This comes later. Same as if I had put two font families in the same element. It's still going to choose a monospace over the sans serif because it's lower down the list. And so if I put this behind it, the font is now sans serif. So that's just the bonus content there. If you remember from earlier in the course here, we had like a style tag in here where style equals and font family monospace. So we had the style tag in here. And so one thing that you may encounter as you go off and you build cool things with code is that the order in which styles get applied matters. And it can kind of be tricky to figure something out. It's like, why am I saying H2 element font family? Can I do cursive? Is that one? Let's just see down here. I'm just curious. Is that one of the fonts? Yeah, there we go. Font family cursive. Okay, so I've got a class that says this should be monospace, and that's that ugly Comic Sans look. Why isn't it monospace? And the reason why is because we've got this inline style that's being applied after this is. And so a general rule of thumb is that we don't actually want to use these. It's a lot easier if we have all of our styling in one place. And so we don't have those confusing issues of like, I'm trying to add this style and it's not doing it. It's because it's buried somewhere in your HTML. So hopefully that bonus content was useful to you. And with that, we're gonna wrap this up. Uh, oh, we've done so much here. There we go. On to the next challenge. Ooh, this is a fun one. We get to use a Google font. This is something I use all the time. So we're gonna actually go to Google Fonts. These are all different fonts we can use on our website, and there's just so many of them, and you can search them. It's great. But I'm gonna put a pause on this course. I want to experiment with doing something more challenging. I'm going to scroll down in the algorithms. Oh, this isn't as crazy as I thought it would be. Recursion create countdown, that makes me nervous. I'd probably solve that before. Recursion, I've done it, and I've created some cool solutions with it, but it just doesn't stick in my head well enough to have confidence. We're gonna do multiple conditional ternary operators. In the previous challenge, you used a single conditional operator. You can also chain them together for multiple conditions. The following function uses if, and else statements to check multiple conditions. The above function can be rewritten using multiple conditional operators. Wow. This I can read and understand what's happening. This is a little weird looking, but it makes sense. It's considered best practice to format multiple conditional operators such that each condition is on a separate line as shown here. Using multiple conditional operators without proper indentation may make your code hard to read. Like, yeah, this is a nightmare. How are you going to read that? I mean, you can. It's readable, but not as readable as this, and certainly not as readable as that. In the check sign function, this is our directions. In the check sign function, use multiple conditional operators following the recommended format used here. To check if a number is positive, negative, or 0, the function should return positive, negative, or 0. All right. Let's do this. We're just going to write this in a return statement. And we could store this in a variable and then return it, but there's no need for that. Return, all right, positive, negative, or 0. So we're going to say positive. I'm just pseudocoding this right now. If it's positive, question mark, is it positive? If it is, we'll return positive. If it's not positive, then we're going to check, is it negative? Is it negative? If it's negative, we're going to say negative. And then else, if it's not any of those things, we're going to say 0. Okay. So I think that this is confusing to go down this road, the way we're going down this. And so if I was coding this in the real world and I was struggling with this ternary, I would start with an if else. So let's say if positive, positive, return positive, else if negative, return negative. And we could do else if 0, but we can just do else for 0. Return 0. Okay. So you don't need this right now. I'm going to comment that out. You might have noticed how I just commented that in and out. How did I do that? I'll save that for the end of the video. Be bonus content. All right. So if positive, how can we check if a number is positive? That is a good question. We can just say if num is greater than 0. I like that. That would be positive, right? And then if it's negative, else if the number is less than 0, then it's negative. Else return 0. So this, how do I run? Well, I'm going to run the tests. Okay, that returns positive. I wish there was a way to just run the function without having to run the tests, but that's okay. Negative. All right, so it looks like this works because the only thing it's complaining about is that we should use multiple conditional operators. So now we're just going to refactor this into our ternary. So if number is greater than 0, it's positive. Number is less than 0, it's negative. Actually, let's do this a fancy way. All right. So at this point, it might be self-evident as to why someone would go through the effort of creating this instead of this. Because like once you understand the syntax, this is a lot cleaner. Takes up a lot less room in your code. So yeah, that's cool. Run the test. This should all pass. Cool. Now for bonus content. Bonus content number 1. How do you comment and uncomment? Well, if you're on a Windows machine, it is Control, hold down Control, and then press the / button near the Shift key. It comments and uncomments the code. That is just so helpful. And then if you're on a Mac, I'm pretty sure it's Control or the equivalent to Control. Same command. I've done it on both machines. So that's bonus content number 1. Bonus content number 2 is that we can use some ES6 or ES5 syntax. I forget what it's called, but this is converting this, refactoring this into an arrow function. So we're going to say const checksum or checksign equals number. Okay. And so far, this should work. Yep. And we can refactor this even further. So this was converting a regular function into an ES6 or ES5 function, an arrow function. And so instead of saying function checksign, I'm basically just creating a variable called checksign, and then it equals, and this is where the parameters go, and then this is where the body goes. We can actually refactor this even further. And so instead of having to say return here, we can just have it return the next few lines. So the way I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna turn these into curly brackets. Oops. And I'm gonna get rid of this return. And so this works. Run the tests. All right. And now, if we wanna get obnoxious with this, we can do all of this on one line. let's just make this real small. Yeah. See how all this is on one line? Run the tests. It works. And because this is all in one line, we don't need this. Huh, that works too. Cool. So hopefully this bonus content was helpful and not infuriating. I'm just because I'm curious, I'm gonna see in my little programming brain how much more I can compress this line. That would work. Prove it works. Then we actually don't need these. These were more of a visual aid than anything. That works. Now here's a good question. How many of these spaces are actually required? I don't recommend, well, this is dumb. I don't recommend doing what I'm doing right now. This is just me doing a dumb exercise with myself. I don't think these spaces are needed right here. Should you have them? Yes. Are they needed? No. And I don't think this space is needed either. Yeah, it's not. So we're going to get rid of that space. And therefore, these aren't needed either. Okay. Now, I don't know if these spaces are needed. I know this one's needed, but are these spaces needed? Let's start with this one. That works. What about this one? That works. This one? That works. This one? Oh, so you don't really need spaces. Oh, there's one I don't need. Guess what? You actually don't even need semicolons in JavaScript in most cases. You still should use them. Wow. Okay. This is a pretty compressed function. Can I make this any more compressed? Can I make this line any more compressed? Let's see. I'm saying if n is greater than 0, it's positive. It's less than 0, it's negative. Else it's 0. Is there any way I could change these up? If I said no, you know what? There's a genius out there that could probably make this shorter, which is not the goal in programming. Please don't just like confuse this with like oh, I gotta make my line super short. Like the whole point of languages is so that it's human readable. Like that's why we have these names like check sign, and why we have greater than and less than operators and things that sort of make sense if you think about it. So this is not a goal. This is just me having fun. Um, if I in a professional setting, if I said, "Hey, this is my function," they probably wouldn't like it. They'd say, "Hey, what the heck, dude?" And they'd have me make it more readable. So cool. That was the algorithm challenge. All right, I think I